Hi, this is Fran with Stampendous, and we have some very fun and unique embossing powders. These are a specialty embossing powder that when you use the powder in the jar and you apply heat to it, you end up with not only a raised but a super raised textured, kind of rubbery texture instead of glossy surface. So as you can see here, I've made a little chart that helps explain why we have 5 different incredible blends. And we've put them together in this little sampler. This gives you an incredible value because you get to try all 5 of them. And you can see here when you get it in the little set, it has a little set of stickers on them. And we strongly recommend that when you get started, you put them onto your little jars so that you can keep straight which is which. But once you follow along with me, you will get to see where you can recognize the different ones as you work with them and why you need all 5. So let's take a look at my little chart here. So we have had the Sparkle Puff. And there are some other stamp companies that have offered the White Puff or something like the Sparkle Puff, but we are the first and maybe the only ones that have the Super Puff. So let me show you. You can also get each of them in the 1-ounce jar, and on each one with it says Dimensional on it, and we've put some other information on it to give you some tips as to how you would use the different ones, which I'll explain as we go along. So there's Super Puff, and on all of this part of the chart, I've sprinkled out some of each one, and just sprinkling it and then taking my heat tool and heat from underneath. There's no sticky ink or anything underneath. Just the sprinkling method will allow me to distinguish between each of these different ones. So the first one is Super Puff. And in sprinkling it, you can see the larger granules. It's like our other chunky embossing powders. And so the Super Puff, you could do a lot of sprinkling with it and heat underneath. Then there's Super Sparkle Puff. And this one has some large crystally sparkles to it, so it makes wonderful sparkly snow. Each of the jars has the name on it real big so that you can distinguish between them. So then we have Super Puff Blend, and this one has the chunky particles and the finer particles all in one. And then there's the White Puff, and then the Sparkle Puff has really fine crystal glitter in it. And so they each work a little bit differently, but going back to the different ones, here you can see the Super Sparkle Puff, and hopefully the light catches the sparkles there. And then the Super Puff Blend, this has, by having the different particles in it, you can get it to attach more easily in a large area, and I can kind of feel some raised and lower textures here, but it's rubbery, it's not shiny, so it looks more like snow. And the White Puff you can see is much finer particles, and this is fine enough so that if you want to stamp with it with your Versamark ink, then you can get all the detail of the design. And with the Sparkle Puff, it has the really fine glitter. And on that one, we did a much more detailed design, and you can still enjoy stamping and embossing to get a beautiful effect. And I'll be showing you some more samples. So let's take a look at how we use this on a couple other things. I'm going to move some things out of the way, and we'll actually heat some here just so that you see what we're doing. And then keep watching so that you find out how we did these lovely samples. Okay, so let's move this over. I'm going to use my Sparkle Puff, Super Sparkle Puff. And I've got some blue paper, so the white will show up very readily. And I'm going to hold it with my clip tool so that when I go to heating it, my hands aren't too close to the heat. So I'm simply going to sprinkle some of these really chunky Super Puff with the sparkles in it. I'm just going to do a bunch over here, for example, just to show you something. Okay, so if I want to take a tool, maybe I'll spread this out a little bit more. I can take a tool and I can play in it and move things around, and then when I heat it, it's going to stay in that configuration with that pattern that I created in it. But if I'm not happy with it, I can simply dust some of that off and go at it again. So now this time you see there's nothing sticky, and that does give me the freedom to change it up. Okay, so I'm going to sprinkle some more. And then this is a very helpful tip. I can now take my brush and move it around so that it's where I want it, and it's going to give me a thicker layer where I want it. And some of it's kind of fun, even if it spreads out here on the edges. But let's say I just want to add a very fluffy textured muff here on the hat. So because there's no ink, it gives me the freedom to keep moving this around and playing in it till I'm happy with the look of it. Okay, so once that's the way you like it, then if you take your heat tool from underneath, okay, no sneezing. Okay, hopefully that stays in focus, and we'll heat from underneath. So when it's really hot like this, you don't want to put your finger in it because it will, it may burn your fingers, and it's still pretty hot. But I'm going to do the little shake test here, and we'll see. Okay, I had it mostly heated there. So that it's as simple as that, and you get this really textured. Now that it's cooled a little bit, I can touch it, and it's very textured, and you can see all the sparkle as well. So it's as simple as that to use. So I described with this one, the Super Puff is really fun to play into it and make some swirly patterns or something. And you can just do a brush or a smaller tool that will kind of make some ridges to it. And then on this one, I took our clear embossing ink, the Boss Gloss, and by doing a whole streak of the ink, then it captured the Super Puff blend, and that worked really well to give me a really nice thick layer there that stays in place to where I had the clear ink. And then with these, I used my Versamark ink, and you can stamp a bold design or a detailed one with the Sparkle Puff. And then I discovered a very exciting thing. You can actually apply color to any of your Super Puff embossing powder. So after you've heated it, then you can apply color. So let's talk about a couple of the things that I used. And I actually made a little stencil here just to show you. And by inking it with the Versamark ink, then I was able to use the Super Puff blend, because that works nice in a big area and still gives me a thick layer. But then any of your pigment inks work very easily. And I actually did this through the stencil, that I took my little daubers and was able to apply ink just to that little area through the same stencil. So that's going to give you a lot of fun possibilities to explore. And then on this one, I actually used my Boss Gloss, the dauber top, to make these little polka dots or snowballs. And with these, I simply used a small dauber from some more of my pigment ink on this one, and that way I can just press it in, and created some fun little dimension there to my snowballs. And so in experimenting with all of these different ways to apply color, I discovered that alcohol markers were an amazing option because they allowed me to get into smaller areas with more detail, and I could even blend colors. So take a look at this card, and you can see that I did sprinkling with the Super Puff. I did sprinkling with the Super Sparkle Puff down here. We used that method to completely cover the hat and the carrot nose and even the arms. So then, let's take a look here. I tried a couple different things, and I found that Sharpie markers were permanent, but they had such small tips that it didn't really work all that well. But any of your alcohol markers with the larger tips, and let me pull out a couple colors here that I used on the nose. So you will find that your Copic markers, for being as expensive as they are, you may not want to try this, but I did test it with mine, and what I found was that it did leave a little bit of it worked really well, but it did leave a little bit of a whitish residue to the tips, but it didn't keep it from continuing to color. And so I'm using these Couture Creation ones, and I love the way the big brush tip works on it. And let's see, I've got my red handy here. So I used some of the Sharpie colors on this one, but they had such small tips that I went back over it with some of these other markers. So here I can take this large brush tip, and particularly if I'm working on a dark color background, it's a very easy technique to simply apply my marker, and I can get right to those areas. And it is so fun. And let's see if I come back with a darker color of red. That didn't even leave enough of a residue on the tip. But even when it looked whitish, I would go to color it on the paper, and the ink still flowed right through any of that area. So I was delighted to use my markers that way to create detailed areas of color and to be able to blend different colors together. So that's what I did on the little ornaments and the greenery down here. And let's maybe add a little bit more of a darker green. And being able to get that kind of detail and apply it exactly where you want it is just really fun. So let's come back in with this color and see if that blends out a little bit. There you see a little bit of the white on the tip, but let's test it, and it still colors through that area. Okay, so that gives you lots of tricks and things that you can do. You can take any number of different designs and apply multiple colors as you like. And I found that watercolor markers, I had some that had some big brush tips, but ultimately they would smear unless I heat set it, and that changed the color a bit, but that gives you another option. So let's take a look at a few more samples here, just to show you a range of fun things that you can do. So this one had a little bit of a lot of the different powders in the set. And here was another one on a medium blue paper. Still did a lot of fun coloring. And of course, you know, this is the white puff. It gives you nice detailed lines. And then the super puff that I sprinkled gives you that look. And then I was quite amazed to find that, let's see here, this design, the Silent Night, has such detailed lines to it. It's incredible. And even this one with the sparkle puff, I thought was just lovely, the way you could see the sheen as if it was the sun glinting on the snow on all of these little branches covered in snow. And then I took, you can see different colors of blue or dark paper. And then with this one, I went back and added some more of the super sparkle puff and created additional clumps of snow on the branches. So it's really amazing that you can do so many things with it. And then with this one, to fill in these larger areas, I used my Boss Gloss and simply swirled it around. I used the blend one, and then I came back in with my blue pigment and just did some simple bit of shading to it. Up here I colored on the hat and the nose, the carrot nose. So, and more sprinkling. There's just so many ways to enjoy all of these different variations. And there's another one where again you can just see all of the sparkle to it. So that gives you a beautiful array of things that you can do with all of your Super Puff Sampler 3D embossing powder. Here we have a card where I used the white puff in the background for the fine detail of the snowflakes. On this card with the latte, I used the white puff to create the pattern against the dark brown paper. And that really looks like your patterns in your coffee blend there. On these house mouse cards, I had a lot of fun sprinkling a whole bunch of the real super puff on top of the little mound of snow here, and it's so fun to actually touch it and feel all of the texture that it added. On this one, I did a bit of sprinkling and a little bit of my Versamarker to kind of get the clumps of snow to just be on the branches, and then other areas it was sprinkled up through the sky to create fun texture of snow. This one as well I did in a similar way, and again you can sprinkle some on and then use your brush to push it around and make it look like it's just on that branch or scattered through the sky. And so that one was super puff as well. And I'll mention on this one has a little bit different look. This was the chunky white embossing powder. And this one is going to give you the larger granules, but they're going to be shiny and not textured like the super puff. On this card, again, we sprinkled the super puff down here along their feet and then just through the sky to make it look like it's snowing on them as they trudge along. So those are some fun examples with the house mouse designs. And on this one, I used one of the quick card designs, but it really enhanced it. If you can see here, I added a whole thick layer of super puff, and I just used my brush to move it around so that it just stayed on the hat and not too much across the little kitty's face. and I added it up here as well on the little pom-pom. And on this one, I just scattered it all across the image, and it's very textured by being the super puff up there in the sky. So anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed getting a lot of tips and ideas about how you can use your super puff sampler and enjoy sprinkling it and creating instant snow wherever you like. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.